contribute to research, more people able to realize my day job may be something that I find utterly unsatisfying, because most of us have jobs rather than passions. And so I really hope that through all the content that we're creating, you are going to find that passion you may not find 9 to 5 or 5 to 4 or whatever wild hours you work. Or if you're like Allie and I, all the multitude of hours that you work across multiple part-time jobs. Do not recommend. 4 jobs. we're gonna keep doing we're gonna keep doing what we're doing. We're not gonna do a whole lot of desperate fundraisers for a year. We're gonna focus really damn hard on bringing you content that takes the resources we have and turns them into as much as we can. One of the things that we haven't talked about yet this weekend is Allie and Beth and I have been figuring out what are the things that we can do to get our content to more people. And while I was always a blogger and microblogger, the world has moved on to Reels, to TikToks, to all these other things that
unleash me on TikTok.
We're gonna unleash CosmoQuest on TikTok and Reels. And we're gonna start taking our segments and taking the short ones and editing them so they fit on your phone and reach all the people who don't even know we exist yet. Now, to do that and keep doing everything else we're doing, you're probably going to see our episodes of Escape Velocity Space News get a little shorter, get a little tighter. And that makes me sad. I like my long form writing very much. Thank you.
Half hour is still long form.
Half hour is still long form, I'm being told. But this will give us the chance to reach more people and hopefully get more people involved in learning and doing science. So tune in and enjoy. Now, the next thing we have on our schedule is story time. We are currently working on reading Edgar Rice Burroughs. It's been 20 some odd hours, I think, at this point. Hello, Kerbal. I want to do history segments again. Hello, Orbuena. Thank you so much for the sub. So yesterday we started on chapter 3 of Edgar Rice Burroughs' The Princess of Mars. This is an initially serialized story. It came out periodically the same way sitcoms and dramas do today. Well, turns out novels used to do that in the past, where it was a book at a time instead of a season at a time, with each chapter coming out each week and a desperately staying tuned in between. Edgar Rice Burroughs' Princess of Mars introduces us to the character of John Carter, introduces us to the idea of the American cowboy somehow settling down for the night in a cave and waking up the next day and finding himself on the red planet. And so we are here to end out the second day of Hangout-a-Thon with John has found himself to Mars. He has settled in. Allie, you may need to check my Discord to see if there's a message to respond to in my DMs. Finds himself on Mars. He has met the green Martians. These are massive, bony, giant figures riding on steeds through the desert. They're living in these ancient cities that they don't fit in. They're living in these ancient cities that seem designed for the human body, with desks their legs don't even fit beneath. They initially wanted to just kill John Carter, because that's how they roll. These are creatures that can live for 1,000 years, and most of them don't reach the age of 300 because of the wars and battles and power trips for dominance that goes on. And here they are, in these ancient, beautiful cities, raising the question of who built these cities, these dusty relics of the past. And we have a raid from Skylius. Welcome, everyone, from Skylius's stream. You are here just in time for story time. I am Dr. Pamela Gay, and tonight I am a storyteller. I will be narrating Edgar Rice Burroughs' The Princess of Mars as we round out the day. Now, the reason we are here, can I tell the story about shushing Neil deGrasse Tyson? Yes, I can. All right. It is story time.
Such a good story.
So we are gathered here so that we're here trying to raise funding for CosmoQuest. We're here to raise funding so that we can continue creating completely Creative Commons based content that any streamer can restream and use, that any teacher can use in their classroom. We are trying to raise $10,000. We need to raise $10,000 this weekend. We would like to raise $30,000 so that we can grow our programs. We are an educational program. And I've been doing science education long enough that I have shushed Neil deGrasse Tyson. Now, Tyson and I are both graduates of the University of Texas. And while he is significantly older than I am, my research publications list is both longer and more recent in many ways. And so when he and I are sitting on stage side by side, I have the receipts for the things coming out of my mouth. And we were speaking at the amazing meeting in Las Vegas, and the poor moderator, Phil Plait, was trying to maintain order between myself, Lawrence Krauss to my left, Neil deGrasse Tyson to my right, and beyond him, Bill Nye. I was the youngest on the stage. I was the only woman on the stage. And I'd been talked over so much for 45 minutes when a young woman asks a question that I knew the answer to. And Neil was determined to say something that was sarcastic and funny, but not an answer. And I wanted to answer the question. It's not that hard, people. And so it started with a hand on shoulder, shh, goes to speak. And that wasn't enough to stop Neil deGrasse Tyson. No. So it had to get a little bit more adamant. It had to get a little bit more shh. But I was finally able to finish my sentence and get my ideas across. And it was one of the most amazing moments of applause that I've had, because first of all, part of me was going, I'm going to die after this panel. I'm going to be shredded to pieces. I have just silenced someone far more famous than I am, but I was right, God damn it. But I'm going to die. You can hold both those emotions at once. But to then hear the audience applauding and look at Twitter when it was Twitter and the fail whale was still a thing, and see so many voices cheering and celebrating and hearing it referred to as the shush heard round the world brings me joy. We all do science for different reasons. One of the heartbreaking parts to me of my career is I can't tell you how many times I've been invited to keynote speak yearly events, and they ask what my speaker's fee is, and I tell them, and they negotiate me down, and I don't hold my ground because I just want a science. And I show up, and I make sure it doesn't cost me money. They have to cover the airfare on American Airlines. That's the one line in the sand I draw. And they have to cover my hotel and food. But mostly I just want a science, people. And I'll get there and I'll speak and I'll have a good time and I'll do what I can to inform people and get them inspired. I don't punch down. I want to lift people up by sharing the good. And I don't know how many times I finished talking, and afterwards one of the event planners will come up to me and be like, "Oh my God, that was so good. I'm so glad we got you. Last year we had Neil deGrasse Tyson and he cost," and they will name a figure that is usually my yearly salary. And as my salary has gone up, his fee has gone up to match. We hired him and he cost, names my yearly salary, and you were so much less and so much better. Folks,
can we have that in there?
if you want if you want to see science that lifts people up, please consider sharing CosmoQuest out with everyone you know, telling them about Escape Velocity Space News, telling them about Astronomy Cast, telling them about 365 Days of Astronomy, telling them about our Spanish language Vision Cosmica. Encourage them to subscribe, encourage them to learn, encourage them to share. And we will encourage them to donate, please, if they like it. And we will encourage you to do the same. Now, I'm going to get real here for a moment because there's a lot of new people in the room. You know from Skylius, I will share science for free any chance I get. I love what folks like Skylius and I get the opportunity to do. And the problem is that as much as I would do it for free, I have bills to pay, and this woman right here, this innocent little bunny rabbit.
Don't.
This innocent little bunny rabbit made the tastiest pork chop known to humankind over 4th of July. And this tasty, magnificent pork chop ended my gallbladder. I ended up in the ER. I ended up sad.
I sat with you in the ER.
She did sit with me in the ER. We were there for years and years and years. I had to get the gallbladder removed. The yeeting of the gallbladder has occurred. The pork chop was worth it, people. The pork chop was worth it. The surgery, not the bills. That pork chop is currently costing me about $3,700 after insurance. And I could set up a GoFundMe. That's what people in this country do when they have medical bills. They set up a GoFundMe. But I don't want to do that. I want to work. I want to work my ass off telling people about our universe and writing software that allows them to participate in science. And if you're the kind of person that likes to kick money over to science, that sometimes kicks money over to people who have medical bills, you can do both right here, right now. And it's not just my medical bills. Sadly, Allie, our producer, who's giving very dirty looks to our screens right now.
That was just my concentrating face.
Her concentrating
Oh my God.
face had me worried. Thank you so much for the
If
subs.
there was something bad, you would hear, oh fuck.
Okay, fair. So we are currently sitting at $3,589 raised. That is not enough to pay for the hours necessary for me to pay my medical bills. It is enough to pay Allie's medical bills.
So
Allie,
far.
so far. Allie, come on camera and be sad.
What happened to the monkey?
Why? I got overheated
All right.
because I have long COVID. She said to be sad. I'm like racking up medical bills at an alarming rate despite having insurance, which, by the way, this also goes towards keeping me like insured.
Yeah.
Because Pamela's wonderful and makes sure that we also have health insurance here, which is great. And it means that my medical bills are, under 10,000, but still creeping pretty close to that. And I know I heard Pamela mention earlier that it's like a lot of people just have jobs. They don't have passions. And I am fortunate enough to get paid to do what I love, which is producing and editing science communication videos and getting to just bring all this wonderful science news to all of you. And I really want to keep doing that. Really want to keep doing that. And if we can hit $10,000, then I can, keep doing that for hopefully another year.
Yeah.
So yeah, just every dollar counts. I really mean it when I say that. Even if you can just give $1, that counts. The numbers are going up. And it's it's not our donation number is not going up as fast as I'd like it to, but it's still going up, and that's wonderful. And just I can't reiterate it enough. Even just if you can just give $1, it helps. And thank you from the bottom of my heart, everyone who has already given and is continuing to give. And it really means a lot to us. It means that we can make shows like Escape Velocity Space News free to the public, while still getting paid to do it. I wish I could do this for free, but medical bills and other stuff, and we still don't have that wonderful Star Trek society where we don't need money, which hopefully someday, but not today. And we really need to hit that $10,000 so that we can keep the lights on.
Okay, enough begging for now. It is time for a story. As I was saying when you all wonderful souls came in, I wish that pre-breakfast banana could actually teleport our debt to deep space.
Yeah.
We really wish that was possible. But since it's not, we're going to imagine passing through a cave and somehow walking from Arizona to Mars. Because that is the premise of Edgar Rice Burroughs' The Princess of Mars. This serialized story predates our missions arriving at the Red Planet and letting us know that the canals that Percy Lowell had thought he had seen were in reality nothing more than dry valleys. Mars once had oceans. It once had lakes and rivers and streams. Not while humans walked the earth. But in this story, we have both. We have life on Mars, we have life on Earth, and the two get to meet. Now, we are going to be starting this story partway through. If you would like to hear it from the beginning, I'm going to start reading it on my personal hobby of a Twitch stream, Starstrider, starting tomorrow evening. So grab yourself a pillow, a stuffed animal, and make yourself comfortable. It's story time. This is Edgar Rice Burroughs' book that has hidden itself on my iPad. This is Chapter 5, I Elude My Watchdog. Sola stared into the brute's wicked-looking eyes, muttered a word or two of command, pointed to me, and left the chamber. I could not but wonder what this ferocious-looking monstrosity might do when left alone in such close proximity to such a relatively tender morsel of meat, but my fears were groundless, as the beast, after surveying me intently for a moment, crossed the room to the only exit which led to the street and lay down full length across the threshold. This was my first experience with a Martian watchdog. But it was destined not to be my last, for this fellow guarded me carefully during the time I remained a captive among these green men. Twice, saving my life and never voluntarily being away from me for a moment. While Sola was away, I took occasion to examine more minutely the room in which I found myself captive. The mural painting depicted scenes of rare and wonderful beauty. Mountains, rivers, lake, ocean, meadow, trees and flowers, winding roadways, sun-kissed gardens, scenes which might have portrayed earthly views but for the different colorings of the vegetation. The work had evidently been wrought by a master hand, so subtle the atmosphere, so perfect the technique, yet nowhere was there representation of a living animal, either human or brute, by which I could guess at the likeness of those other and perhaps extinct denizens of Mars. While I was allowing my fancy to run idiot riot to wild conjectures on possible explanation of the strange anomalies which had so far met with me on Mars, Sola returned bearing both food and drink. These she placed on the floor beside me, and seating herself a short ways off, regarded me intently. The food consisted of about a pound of solid substance of the consistency of cheese and almost tasteless, while the liquid was apparently milk from some animal. It was not unpleasant to taste, though slightly acid, and I learned in a short time to prize it very highly. It came, as I later discovered, not from an animal, as there is only one mammal on Mars, and that one very rare indeed, but from a large plant which grows practically without water, but seems to distill its plentiful supply of milk from the products of the soil, the moisture of the air, and the rays of the sun. A single plant of this species will give 8 or 10 quarts of milk per day. After I had eaten, I was greatly invigorated, but feeling the needs of rest, I stretched out upon the silks and was soon asleep. I must have slept several hours, as it was dark when I awoke, and I was very cold. I noticed that someone had thrown a fur over me, but it had become partially dislodged, and in the darkness, I could not see to replace it. Suddenly, a hand reached out and pulled the fur over me, shortly afterwards adding another to my covering. Thank you so much for the bits. Thank you. I presumed that my watchful guardian was Sola, nor was I wrong. This girl alone, among all the green Martians with whom I came in contact, disclosed characteristics of sympathy, kindliness, and affection. Her ministrations to my bodily wants were unfailing, and her solicitous care It saved me from suffering and many hardships. As I was to learn, the Martian nights are extremely cold, and as there is practically no twilight or dawn, the changes in temperature are sudden and most uncomfortable, as are the transitions from brilliant daylight to darkness. The nights are either brilliantly illuminated or very dark, for if neither of the two moons of Mars happen to be in the sky, almost total darkness results, since the lack of atmosphere, or rather the very thin atmosphere, fails to diffuse the starlight to any great extent. On the other hand, if both of the moons are in the heavens at night, the surface of the ground is brightly illuminated. Both Mars moons are vastly nearer her than our own moon to Earth, the nearer moon being but 5,000 miles distant, while the further is but little more than 14,000 miles away, against the nearly 250,000 miles which separate us from our moon. The nearer moon of Mars makes a complete revolution around the planet in a little over 7½ hours, so that she may be seen hurtling through the sky like some huge meteor 2 or 3 times each night, revealing all her phases during each transit of the heavens. The further moon revolves about Mars in something over 30¼ hours, and with her sister satellite makes a nocturnal Martian scene one of splendid and weird grandeur. And it is well that nature has so graciously and abundantly lighted the Martian night, for the green men of Mars, being a nomadic race without high intellectual development, have but crude means for artificial lighting, dependent principally upon torches, a kind of candle, and a particular oil lamp which generates a gas and burns without a wick. This last device produces an intensely brilliant, far-reaching white light, but as the natural oil which it requires can only be obtained by mining it one of several widely separated and remote localities, it is seldom used by these creatures whose only thought is for today, and whose hatred for manual labor has kept them in a semi-barbaric state for countless ages. After Sola had replenished my coverings, I again slept, nor did I awaken until daylight. The other occupants of the room, 5 in number, were all females, and they were still sleeping, piled high and with a motley array of silks and furs. Across the threshold lay stretched the sleepless guardian brute, just as I had last seen him on the preceding day. Apparently he had not moved a muscle. His eyes were fairly glued upon me, and I fell to wondering just what might befall me should I endeavor to escape. I have ever been prone to seek adventure, and to investigate and experiment where wiser men would have left well enough alone. It therefore now occurred to me that the surest way of learning the exact attitude of this beast toward me would be to attempt to leave the room. I felt fairly secure in my belief that I could escape him should he pursue me once I was outside the building, for I had begun to take great pride in my ability as a jumper. Furthermore, I could see from the shortness of his legs that the brute himself was no jumper and probably no runner. Slowly and carefully, therefore, I gained my feet, only to see that my watcher did the same. Cautiously, I advanced toward him, finding that by moving with a shuffling gait, I could retain my balance as well as make reasonably rapid progress. As I neared the brute, he backed cautiously away from me, and when I had reached the open, he moved to one side to let me pass. He then fell in behind me, and followed about 10 paces in my rear as I made my way along the deserted street. Evidently, his mission was to protect me only. I thought, But when we reached the edge of the city, he suddenly sprang before me, uttering strange sounds and baring his ugly and ferocious tusks. Thinking to have some amusement at his expense, I rushed toward him, and when almost upon him, sprang into the air, alighting far beyond him and away from the city. He wheeled instantly and charged me with the most appalling speed I had ever beheld. I had thought his short legs a bar to swiftness, but had he been coursing with greyhounds, the latter would have appeared as though asleep on a doormat. As I was to learn, this is the fleetest animal on Mars, and owing to its intelligence, loyalty, and ferocity, is used in hunting and war and as the protector of Martian men. I quickly saw that I would have difficulty in escaping the fangs of a beast on a straightaway course, and so I met his charge by doubling in my tracks and leaping over him as he was almost upon me. This maneuver gave me a considerable advantage, and I was able to reach the city quite a bit ahead of him. And as he came tearing after me, I jumped for a window about 30 feet from the ground and in the face of one of the buildings overlooking the valley. Grasping the sill, I pulled myself up to a sitting posture without looking into the building and gazed down at the baffled animal beneath me. My exultation was short-lived, however, for scarcely had I gained a secure seat upon the sill than a huge hand grasped me by the neck from behind and dragged me violently into the room. Here I was thrown upon my back and beheld, standing over me, a colossal ape-like creature, white and hairless, except for an enormous shock of bristled hair upon his head. And that concludes chapter 5. Do I continue to chapter 6? What do people think? It's 11:31. I'm getting the go-ahead from the folks in the room. I just want to take a moment to take a look at where we are on donations. They've gone up. We're at $3,692. We have a unknown, very small and out of range of my glasses number of bits.
17171.
17171. Is that a palindrome?
That is a palindrome.
That is a palindrome. I am very excited. I like palindromes, humans. I really, really like palindromes. Great reading. If you're tired, stop. If you're up for it, continue. I shall continue. I'm enjoying this story. And if you're enjoying the story too, throw some pennies to the... How am I forgetting the line from The Witcher?
Toss a coin.
Toss a coin to your...
Science communicator.
To your science communicator. So if you're enjoying it, toss a coin to your science communicator. All right. Chapter 6. And in case you hadn't caught on, our hero can jump these great heights, but because he has earth muscles in Martian gravity. All right. Here we go. Chapter 6. A Fight That Won Friends. The thing which more nearly resembled our earthly men than it did the Martians I had seen, held me pinioned to the ground with one huge foot, which it jabbered and gesticulated at some answering creature behind me. This other, which was evidently its mate, soon came toward us, bearing a mighty stone cudgel, with which it evidently intended to brain me. The creatures were about 10 or 15 feet tall, standing erect, and had, like the green Martians, an intermediary set of arms and legs midway between their upper and lower limbs. Their eyes were close together and non-protruding. Their ears were high-set but more laterally located than those of the Martians, while their snouts and teeth were strikingly like those of our African gorilla. although they were not unlovely when viewed in comparison with the green Martians. The cudgel was swinging in the arc which ended upon my upturned face when a bolt of myriad-legged horror hurled itself through the doorway, full upon the breast of my executioner. With a shriek of fear, the ape which held me leapt through the open window, but its mate closed in a terrific death struggle with my preserver, which was nothing less than my faithful watch thing. I cannot bring myself to call so hideous a creature a dog. As quickly as possible, I gained my feet and backed against the wall. I witnessed such a battle as it is vouchsafed few beings to see. The strength, agility, and blind ferocity of these two creatures is approached by nothing known to earthly man. My beast had an advantage in his first hold, having sunk his mighty fangs far into the breast of his adversary. But the great arms and paws of the ape, backed by muscles far transcending those of the Martian men I had seen, had locked the throat of my guardian and slowly were choking out his life. And bending back his head and neck upon his body, where I momentarily expected the former to fall limp at the end of a broken neck. In accomplishing this, the ape was tearing away the entire front of its breast, which was held in the vice-like grip of the powerful jaws. Back and forth upon the floor they rolled, neither one emitting a sound of fear or pain. Presently, I saw the great eyes of my beast bulging completely from their sockets, and blood flowed from its nostrils. That he was weakening perceptibly was evident, but so also was the ape, whose struggles were growing momentarily less. Suddenly I came to myself, and, with that strange instinct which seems ever to prompt me to my duty, I seized the cudgel, which had fallen to the floor at the commencement of the battle, and swinging it with all the power of my earthly arms, I crashed it full upon the head of the ape, crushing his skull as though it had been an eggshell. Scarcely had the blow descended when I was confronted with a new danger. The ape's mate, recovered from its first shock of terror, had returned to the scene of the encounter by way of the interior of the building. I glimpsed him just before he reached the doorway, and the sight of him, now roaring as he perceived his lifeless fellow stretched upon the floor and frothing at the mouth, in the extremity of his rage, filled me, I must confess, with dire foreboding. I am ever willing to stand and fight when the odds are not too overwhelmingly against me. But in this instance, I perceive neither glory nor profit in pitting my relatively puny strength against the iron muscles and brutal ferocity of this enraged denizen of an unknown world. In fact, the only outcome of such an encounter, so far as I might be concerned, seemed sudden death. I was standing near the window, and I knew that once in the street, I might gain the plaza in safety before the creature could overtake me. At least there was a chance for safety and flight against almost certain death, should I remain and fight, however desperately. It is true, I held the cudgel. But what could I do with it against his four great arms? Even should I break one of them with my first blow, for I figured that he would attempt to ward off the cudgel, he could reach out and annihilate me with the others before I could recover for a second attack. In the instant that these thoughts passed through my mind, I had turned to make for the window, but my eyes alighted on the form of my erstwhile guardian threw all thoughts of flight to the four winds. He lay, gasping upon the floor of the chamber, his great eyes fastened upon me in what seemed a pitiful appeal for protection. I could not withstand that look, nor could I, on second thought, have deserted my rescuer without giving as good an account for myself in his behalf as he had given in mine. Without more ado, therefore, I turned to meet the charge of the infuriated bull-ape. He was now too close upon me for the cudgel to prove of any effective assistance, so I merely threw it as heavily as I could at his advancing bulk. It struck him just below the knees, eliciting a howl of pain and rage, and so throwing him off his balance that he lunged full upon me with arms wide stretched to ease his fall. Again, as on the preceding day, I had recourse to earthly tactics, and swinging my right fist full upon the point of his chin, I followed it with a smashing left to the pit of his stomach. The effect was marvelous, for as I lightly sidestepped after delivering the second blow, he reeled and fell upon the floor, doubled up with pain and gasping for wind. Leaping over his prostrate body, I seized the cudgel and finished the monster before he could regain his feet. As I delivered the blow, a low laugh rang out behind me, and I turned. I beheld Tarkas, Sola, and 3 or 4 warriors standing in the doorway of the chamber. As my eyes met theirs, I was, for the second time, the recipient of their zealously guarded applause. My absence had been noted by Sola upon her awakening, and she had quickly informed Tarkas, who had set out immediately with a handful of warriors to search for me. As they had approached the limits of the city, they had witnessed the actions of the bull-ape as he bolted into the building frothing with rage. They had followed immediately behind him, thinking it barely possible that his actions might prove a clue to my whereabouts, and had witnessed my short but decisive battle with him. This encounter, together with my set to with the Martian warrior on the previous day, and my feats of jumping, placed me upon a high pinnacle in their regard. Evidently devoid of all the finer sentiments of friendship, love, or affection, these people fairly worshipped physical prowess and bravery, and nothing is too good for the object of their adoration as long as he maintains his position by repeated examples of his skill, strength, and courage. Sola, who had accompanied the searching party of her own volition, was the only one of the Martians whose face had not been twisted in laughter as I battled for my life. She, on the contrary, was sober with apparent solicitude, and as soon as I had finished the monster, rushed to me and carefully examined my body for possible wounds or injuries. Satisfying herself that I had come off unscathed, she smiled quietly, and taking my hand, started toward the door of the chamber. Tarkas and the other warriors had entered and were standing over the now rapidly reviving brute who had saved my life and whose life I, in turn, had rescued. They seemed to be in deep argument, and finally one of them addressed me, but remembering my ignorance of his language, turned back to Tarkas, who, with a word and gesture, gave some command to the fellow and turned to follow us from the room. There seemed something menacing in their attitude toward my beast, and I hesitated to leave until I had learned the outcome. It was well I did so, for the warrior drew an evil-looking pistol from his holster and was on the point of putting an end to the creature when I sprang forward and struck up his arm. The bullet, striking the wooden casing of the window, exploded, blowing a hole completely through the wood and masonry. I then knelt down beside the fearsome-looking thing and, raising it to its feet, motioned for it to follow me. The looks of surprise which my actions elicited from the Martians were ludicrous. They could not understand, except in a feeble and childish way, such attributes as gratitude and compassion. The warrior whose gun I had struck looked inquiringly at Tarkis, but the latter signed that I be left to my own devices, and so we returned to the plaza with my great beast following close at heel, and Sola grasping me tightly by the arm. I had at least 2 friends on Mars, a young woman who watched over me with motherly solicitude, and a dumb brute which, as I later came to know, held in its poor ugly carcass more love, more loyalty, more gratitude than could have been found in the entire 5 million green Martians who rove the deserted cities and dead sea bottoms of Mars. And that concludes chapter 6. And I think I am going to end there and just say I love the fact that throughout fiction is a trail of heroes willing to murder for their dog, or the brutish Martian thing they're unwilling to call a dog, and yet find the same love and loyalty within. Super Gimp Man, I'm glad you super enjoyed that. I will be starting this story over from the beginning Tuesday night and reading it on my personal channel, Starstrider. So let's see where we are on the donations.
It went up. Number go up.
Still loading. Number went up. Number went up. We are all things added together closer to $4,000 than we were earlier. Math is hard when you can only see some of the numbers.
I think we're about $30 short.
So we're about $30 short of 4,000. We really, hello, Lord Gorjax. It is ye old Hangout-a-Thon.
$80 will get us to a palindrome.
$80 will get us to a palindrome. If someone could donate $80 to Kindful, we would have a palindrome and we would be at $4,000 when all things are added together. And I think all of us would dream a little bit sweeter. So I'm going to go ahead and answer questions for the next few minutes. Toss a coin to your science communicators. Yes, yes, indeed. I guess it's my job to slay monsters while Allie travels the landscape with me. Is that how we do this?
Yes.
I'm told yes. Yes.
So what are we doing?
You were
Allie is tired.
You were the bard, I am the witcher?
Yes.
All
I'm
right.
definitely the bard because I can't stop running my mouth.
So yeah. We're trying to get to a palindrome. I don't know if we'll get there. So we all have passions. We all have things that we love to do. And it was science fiction that got me into astronomy. It was a rather stranger journey than most people. Most people who get from science fiction to science, it's because they're so excited about the spaceships and the science in the science fiction. I was young and silly and really liked Battlestar Galactica, the original series from the 1970s. That when I watched it as an adult, I understand why it only had 1 season. But when I came out, I was really, really tiny, and it was really, really good. And I wanted to be Apollo's sister, and I had a crush on Starbuck. And as an adult science communicator, I met Richard Hatch, the actor who played the OG Apollo, and went on to play President Zachariah. Can't. Yeah, with many letters. On the new Battlestar Galactica, we were both in the green room at Pensacon, and I was so sick. I had pneumonia. I didn't know I had pneumonia. And this was back when you still traveled when you were sick, because that was the expectation of this civilization. And I'm sitting with my hot tea on the sofa, and Richard Hatch sits next to me. And I said, "Hi." And I said, "We have a common friend. Your science advisor for Battlestar Galactica," the new one, not the old one, "is Kevin Grazier, and he's a planetary scientist that I know from Dragon Con and from science, because I'm an astronomer." And we started talking. And I got to explain to the original OG Apollo, who in fan fiction I wrote in my head I was his sister. I got to explain to him that the asteroid that exploded as an airburst over Chelyabinsk, Russia, in, I believe it was 2012 or 13 on Valentine's Day, was an Apollo-class asteroid. That is my proudest, nerdiest moment of many nerdy moments. And I just want to keep spreading that kind of science, but it really was Battlestar Galactica. Yeah, we don't that was a separate series. It was a spin-off, and you're right. We do not discuss it on the Diagonal. We do not discuss it. So there I was watching Battlestar Galactica as this little kid, and here's a character named Apollo, and here's his sister Athena, and here's this woman Cassiopeia. And I started looking up their names, and Starbuck came from Moby Dick, and as a small child, that was just beyond my no. I read that later. And Starbuck was an interesting character and worthy of having his name used. But I started reading about Apollo and Athena and Cassiopeia and Poseidon and all these other names out of so many mythologies. Sheba and Cain. And I wanted to know the stories. And so I started reading the myths. And then I found out all the constellations, or at least many of them, came from these stories, and the objects in our sky were associated with these stories, and I could see Cassiopeia in my sky above me, and the Pegasus, that other battle star, off to the side, and I knew that somewhere between them that I could never see from my New England backyard, there was a galaxy called Andromeda. And so I went from this ridiculously bad science fiction series that I loved, and I still love in the way you love the things you loved as a child, to learning about Greek gods and myths and stories, to seeing those stories in the sky and getting a telescope and seeing them in detail in the sky. You never know where science fiction is going to take you. And I went straight down the rabbit hole, and I came out a PhD astrophysicist. And so I share my love of science fiction on my personal stream as a narrator. And I invite all of you to stay on this screen and learn science. All right, let's see where the totals are. All right, we're going to call it a night there. I would have probably done a happy squeaky noise had that gone up. But you know, times are tough. I had to cancel a whole bunch of my patrons' Patreon subscriptions because food bills, medical bills. I get it.
Is a rabbit hole some variant of an educational wormhole.
Yes, yes, it is. It just has many Wikipedias pinned up, many Wikipedia pages pinned up to its walls, or library books or used book sale books, depending on what era and what access. The used book sales of my youth were the best thing ever. Anyways, it is time to say goodnight. We will be back tomorrow morning at 10 a.m. Central, 11 a.m. Eastern.
Standard.
Hold.
I'm being told to hold. Holding.
Hold on. No, we got that. It's standard time.
Tomorrow's standard time.
The clocks go weird.
We're having time change tonight.
I just said, did I say Central Daylight?
No.
I just said Central Time, didn't I? We're starting at 10 a.m. Central tomorrow.
Yes.
There is a clock change tonight.
Yes.
Your cell phones will handle that clock change.
Yes.
Your bodies won't.
I don't know when it is in Europe, but we have it correct on our...
Europe was already last week.
Okay, Europe is fine.
We're going to talk about it in the first...
Yeah. So tomorrow's first hour at 10 a.m. Central, 11 a.m. Eastern, 8 a.m. Pacific. I don't know what time in the rest of the world. It is exactly 12 hours different in Indonesia.
Yeah.
So at 10 p.m. in Indonesia, we are going to be back. We're going to be talking about how time zones and this godforsaken hour, we go back and forth doing the hokey pokey with our clocks every year.
I have some strong feelings on this.
Keeper of Maps, who's really our keeper of times and fixed our times for this event, he and I and some of our European community members are going to be back talking about it.
Yep.
All right, 1600 UTC. Let's recycle that time one more, that button. All right. So this is where we're going to end the night. We will be back in the morning. Wherever you are in the world, have a fabulous morning, evening, or afternoon.
Yep.
Stay safe, be well, and we will see you